Celtics Reddit podcast.
Back out to Smart. Fakes the pass all the time. Three. Bang! It's Williams three. Lobs it up to Robert Williams.
Jaylen Brown.
Tatum. Durant, the long reach. Tatum crossover pull-up jumper. It's good. 50 points for Jason Tatum.
Hello and welcome to the Celtics Reddit podcast. It's Wayne Spooney here. I've got our newest member of the podcast team, Jake Eisenberg, with me, but we have a special guest, a recurring guest. That's Dan Greenberg of Barstool Sports, better known as Barstool Greenie, the man with the best headlines in basketball. How you doing, Greenie?
I'm doing all right. I think that's how I would phrase it. I'm doing okay. I've been better in my life, but I'm doing all right.
Yeah, I hear you. Jake, how about yourself, my man?
Yeah, all right. Yes, fine. You know, there's no Celtics to kind of distract me from my day-to-day issues, which is maybe good, maybe bad. We'll find out in the next 6 weeks or so.
I can assure you my wife and family appreciates that there's no Celtics to distract me. But Greenie, since we last had you on, man, Celtics went to the finals. That was pretty cool,
choked away
man.
finals. Yeah.
yeah. So what was it like on the internet for you after the Celtics lost the finals? Because if you don't know, Greenie has the largest collection of trolls online for any Celtics blogger.
Well, I mean, I'd say it's warranted. You know, I poke the bear, so to speak. So that doesn't really bother me, but it's tough. It's hard because, you know, once the clock hit zero, I had like an out of body experience. I don't really know what went on for the next like 3 to 5 days post finals. I'm sure my mentions were awful. I tried not to look. You know, I think with the amount of shit that I talked along the way, I knew that, you know, had they not pulled it off, that it was going to be, you know, right back in my direction. But that's the internet. You know, I'm a firm believer in if you don't want it, don't give it. And you know, when we were going through Nets fans and then Bucks fans who wouldn't stop crying, and then Heat fans who wouldn't stop crying, and then, you know, Warriors fans who were like weirdly part Lakers fans because the Lakers were out of it, and they're just like, you know, 12-year-olds who just, you know, Warriors fans are their own special breed. So
they are,
you know, up 2-1 after stealing game one, of course I'm going to, you know, run my mouth. So, you know, I think I'm a firm believer in never deleting tweets. So I think there were a few from like games 1 and 3 that seemed to resurface with a certain fan base. I noticed was the handle. Most of them said like, you know, Steph Curry, GOAT 420, stuff like that. Yeah. There was a lot of those, but
or LeBron,
like
GOAT.
I said, if you don't want that stuff, don't lose 3 straight, you know, to lose a title. So,
all right, before we jump into the run sheet here, last episode, Jake and Ben went through who of those 4 teams we played in the playoffs had the worst fans. Yep. The biggest pains in the ass. So on record, Greenie, who is it?
I mean,
it's obviously not Brooklyn. It's
clearly not Brooklyn. It's not the Nets. I mean, no, it wasn't them. It's hard, man. I'd say after Brooklyn, it was probably Golden State as like the, you know, 3 out of the 4. I mean, just because we don't really deal with them all that much as a collective fan base. I mean, you see them twice a year. Obviously, you're in the finals, so it's like, you know, the team that's talking trash to you won the championship. So that just comes with the territory of winning. So then you're asking me to decide between Bucks and Heat fans. I mean, Christ, they're both bad. They're both awful the same way they would both think that Celtic fans are awful. I'd probably say Heat and then Bucks. Bucks for me take the cake just because I think, you know, the Heat fans, they have a sense of self-awareness, right? Like they're trying, like the Heat culture is the thing that's just the hashtag Heat culture is what's annoying about Heat fans. But the Bucks fans, it's like Giannis has never committed an offensive foul. Giannis has never done anything sketchy. it's what about Chris Middleton? They like to throw that around while ignoring the fact that they won their title largely in part due to just their lack of self-awareness. And I'm pretty sure there was that one dude who went on like a campaign to call Al Horford a dirty player, which was like very weird. So for me, it's probably Bucks fans 1, then Heat, then Warriors, then Nets.
Yeah, Jake, you had the Bucks, right?
I had the exact same ranking. The Zapruder film after every game of the Bucks series was the most painful fucking experience I've ever been through. But I had an honorable mention that we didn't play was the Raptors fans. Like those fucking guys are sickos.
Well, they just have an inferiority complex,
Dude.
But having said that, when they won the title, talk all you want. Like
no question.
When you win, you can say like I had no problem with after they won everything Draymond said. Like you win, the fans can talk, the players can talk, but like it's 2022. You can't still be living off that 2019 title. And I just obviously the Celtics and the Raptors have their history. I just think that it's mostly like little brother syndrome with them as opposed to just with the Bucks. It's like obviously they have the best players in the world. They were the defending champs, whatever. But just like the lack of self-awareness that I have to deal with. It's like, oh, you only got there because of injuries. Well, what about last year's title? Oh, well, that was just like Giannis was the best player. It's like, well, yeah, let's just have a real discussion if you want to talk about that. And they just couldn't do it. So, but we would be on top of everybody's lists, like, oh, if you had to play a team, who would you find most obnoxious? Like 99% of fan bases are going to say Celtics fans, and that's fine. So it's part of the game.
Yeah, I was saying I kind of found you went through a Twitter boss at each level. Like there was one account,
definitely.
2 accounts.
Definitely.
I was thinking in reverse, you're probably that account for a lot of people.
Yeah.
You've got to deal with them.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I just think of myself like any other, like,
of course,
like any other Celtic fan. I don't consider myself like a final boss by any fucking means, but I do agree with you that that's what even like with the actual teams, like that's what it was for me. It's like each level was like a different level of boss. And unfortunately, we all smashed our PlayStations at the end because we couldn't beat the final boss because Steph Curry is legitimately a final boss.
So good. I didn't smash my PlayStation because I'm an Xbox guy, but otherwise.
Oh, that's unfortunate. So
anyway, all right. So let's jump into like shit that didn't happen a month ago that I've already totally forgotten about. Big news is the Celtics didn't use the Hayward/Fournier TPE. I mean, do we think, was that a failure? Do we not give a shit because we got Brogdon? And I've got a Reddit comment here from user Coco1520 that says 3 seconds, as in second round picks, wasted. So Jake, do you think it's a failure? Do you not really care?
Dude, Celtics fans or fans in general will find anything to complain about, I swear. Like, I mean, I'll see what Greenie thinks, but I mean, I don't know how you can look at the offseason without thinking it's an A or an A+. Personally, I'm just happy to see the TPE go finally after 2 years of just like firing up the trade machine and trying to convince yourself that teams are going to give you good players for nothing. And so like, I think that even to the bitter end, we could not comprehend that concept. Like, yes, we want one more. Yes, if I woke up and Jakob Poeltl was on the Celtics for a second round pick, I would have been stoked. But everything we learned about the Spurs over the past years is that they're going to squeeze you for real assets. And like Derek White trade, DeJounte Murray trade, you have to give up real shit to get real shit back. And are you going to give up real shit for a guy that's going to play 8 minutes a game? I know we bullied Wick into not being a broke boy finally and being like one of the top 5 spenders, but I don't know how willing they are to spend $50 million on a dude that's probably not going to, hopefully not play in the playoffs. So I'm fine with it. Yeah, I would have liked him to get someone, but I don't care. Yeah, don't care.
Yeah, Greenie.
So if you look at it straight up, like, did they use it? Yes or no? No. So in that context, it's a fail because the asset in and of itself was quote unquote wasted. But I think when you look at how it impacts their offseason, you have to look at it as sort of like a living and breathing organism, right? So it's like when they entered the offseason, I think we all wanted them to say, okay, with all of your available tools, go ahead and improve the roster and fill your needs. Whether that was through trade, whether that was through TPE, whether that was through using the mid-level, like just do something to improve the roster. But I think none of us, in fact, not a person on the planet, could have foreseen and predicted what the trade package was for a player like Malcolm Brogdon, right? Like that was Aaron Nesmith and a ham sandwich. But the cost of that was those filler, the picks, the high upside rookie contract player, whatever, and then contract filler, those were your collateral for potentially using the TPE to bring in a player of substance. So had that trade not happened and they still had all those assets and then didn't use the TPE in addition to that, we have a much bigger problem. But the fact that they did use those assets, it's like Jake said, you're not going to give up Peyton Pritchard and an additional first-round pick or even a high second-round pick for your third-string center. Now, the thing where I think you could have gotten around that is, were there any low-salary backup centers between like $1 and $3 million that you could have used the part of the Fournier TPE for, just because like maybe they make a little bit more than veteran minimum and the tax bill is like, $10 million more instead of, someone that makes Jacob Poeltl money where it's $50 million more. So I think it's sad that we have to, move on from the Fournier TPE. It was so fun, but I tweeted it out. It's like, listen, I got the Wancho TPE. I got the Dennis TPE. I have an endless supply of TPEs that I can move on to. So it's sad that, the fun of trying to, play the game of who they could use it on. But like when you look at the picks and the assets that they had available to then pair with it to bring in that player, none of us would want to give up a rotation player in your top 7-8 rotation for a third string center. And the Malcolm Brogdon deal was, even though it wasn't the TPE move, like that was the TPE move. And then they used their mid-level exemption on Gallo. So it's like they did everything that we, I think, all wanted them to when we hit the offseason. They just didn't have to use one of the vehicles available to them to improve the roster.
Yeah, they still have that. We're not caught off cold turkey. We're not quitting smoking like all in one go. We still got the one show. We still got the Schroeder TPE.
Oh yeah, like if you don't think I'm looking at who makes under 6.9 million, like you're out of your mind.
You don't know this man.
Yeah. But those guys, exactly. We don't have to give up too much to get those guys, and that doesn't expire for a while. So we can chill. We can get to rehab. We can come back out. We can relapse. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah. And before we move on, again, we've got those two TPEs where we can grab one of those lower, cheaper centers that you were talking about, Greenie. And also the 3 seconds is kind of a misnomer. One was a top 55 protected second. Like that was not a real pick. And I think another was a swap. With like
I also don't give a shit about second round picks. Like late second round picks, I just don't care.
You on bigger on slander in this podcast? Come on, man.
But in a sense that like we have some already drafted and stashed. Like essentially, there's not going to be room for them. And if you have to pay that price to bring in real talent, like what are we doing?
It's worth it.
The same people who get mad that Ainge never traded a pick are now the same ones complaining that they traded. It's like, whatever. Get over it.
You can't win. I do want Brad to have a European stash in every European country by the end of his, by the time he retires, though. He's just taking over Europe. All right. So this is dovetailing nicely. It's almost like I planned this shit or something. Jake jumped the gun a little bit. So I'm going to throw it to you, Greenie, first. Yeah, you always do that to me. So overall, man, what is your offseason grade for the Celtics?
I'd probably give it a A-. Just because of the unknown risk that, is attached with someone like Brogdon. Like from a value standpoint, it's an A+. But when I factor in sort of what it could mean and the injury risks moving forward and the fit and the minute distribution. Like, there are potential concerns that I think are factored in. Gallo, like, listen, if it's the Gallo that made 10 straight threes against us, great. If it's the other one that had a pretty brutal, postseason run more recently, it's not as great, but we're talking about the mid-level. So I'd say A to A-, but maybe like a 92, something like that.
Okay, all right. That'd be a good grade for me in high school. Jake, how about you?
I was gonna say, yeah, I'm a easy grader. I need the curve to swing in my favor. A for me. Brogdon, yes, of course, injury concern, but I've already fired up the propaganda line is those two 54, 56 game seasons. When you factor in the COVID seasons, they're basically like 63 game seasons anyway.
Yeah.
And if you get 63 games out of Brogdon, anyone really, you're fine with that. You're not having questions about making all NBA teams, et cetera, et cetera. And then Gallinari, on the other hand, I mean, he was a key cog on a conference finals team only 2 years ago. So the playoff run against
finals.
the Heat, look, they were there.
I know.
And look, again, Gallinari to me, it's similar to Pritchard with the playoff run in that I just need them to be able to play some minutes in round 1.5. Like I don't. Once we get to the conference finals and finals, it's okay if Gallinari's given you maybe a couple minutes here and there in the early part of the series, and then we're able to load up the minutes on the Jays. It's just we needed some depth, so we're not loading them up so early. For me, I mean, how can you kept the finals team together and you added a former All-Star and Gallinari, still got the TPE. I know we're gonna get into some big men, but
that's my biggest concern, right? Like, they still haven't addressed that situation. So, like, I can't give them a full A just because, like, listen, I loved Cab. I saw him in person in all 4. Like, listen, you won't find a bigger Cab fan than me, but, like, he's a two-way guy, so he's not even eligible for the postseason. So it's like they still haven't answered that question, and I think we've learned that over the course of the regular season, if we're going to be load managing Al, there's always Rob's load management issues. Like Daniel Tice was a really good regular season reserve big.
Yes.
That does not exist right now, unless you just think, Gallo is going to be that player, but he's inching a little bit older, and I don't think they're going to want to burn him out either. So I don't know. We'll have to see who they bring in, because that's definitely still a question.
Yeah, and we've got a Reddit comment here from user GUWOP_official who says, we need a backup big. Don't care how we get one, but this team will pay the price for not getting one if that's what happens. And I mean, you're touching on it, Greenie. Backup big is far more important to the Celtics than I think it is maybe for any other team in the NBA, because Rob and Al, you can at least somewhat replace what they do in the regular season. So I think you can find like a decent facsimile. Like, who gives a shit who the Sixers backup center is, right? If Embiid goes down, they're fucked. It doesn't matter. At least with Tice, we could be like, all right, man, he was fine against the Nets. I mean, he was even playing playoff minutes and was all right. So I would definitely dock Brad for that, because if you look around at who's available for backup bigs, I'm talking myself into Dwight Howard right now.
Me too,
that's
bro.
how far I'm falling.
Me too, bro. But you know what? It's not as bad as you think. If you look into it, it's not as bad as you think.
Please take the floor.
I mean, it's not great. I mean, you look at the names. You're looking at Boogie. You're looking at Dwight. You're looking at I look who else was there. I think it was like LaMarcus Aldridge. Nothing is great. And I think the issue when you talk about all these players is like, oh, well, he sucks on defense, or oh, he can't score. It's like, listen.
Yeah, no shit.
If you're still on the market on July 20th, you're flawed. And that was the same thing with, when we're talking about, the summer league guys. It's like JD Davidson went 53 because he's flawed, right? In some areas. JD, Yuhan is flawed in some areas. That's why he's a draft and stash. So it's like, it always made me laugh when it's like, if you're looking at even Gallo for the mid-level, it's like, oh, he's slow and can't move. Well, if he wasn't, he wouldn't be signing for the mid-level. So I think, we just need to understand that when you're talking about a veteran minimum guy, a third string backup center, he's not going to be a perfect two-way player. going to come down to where do you want that inefficiency to be? Do you want it to be someone like Boogie who's, can give you something offensively, but is going to be a disaster in space defensively? Do you want it like someone like Dwight who has zero offensive game outside of putbacks and lobs, but he can rebound, he can play acceptable defense, and he's someone who has shown he can accept a reserve big man role. But like, he's not a perfect guy either. He's already 36, 37. So it's like, it's more of a pick your poison. And when you look at how their roster's constructed, we know that they can succeed with a vertical lob threat in Rob. So for me, I look at Dwight as a guy who's going to rebound. He has 6 fouls and knows how to give them. And listen, he knows he's not the worst defender of all the options. And we know that Ime is not going to play anybody who can't defend at an acceptable level. So it's like, unless you're going to pull off some sort of trade that we don't know about for a low money center, then like, what is the option? Because, or are you just going to maybe wait into the buyout market or something? Because everybody that's available is flawed. There's no two ways around that.
Man, Dwight Howard, like on paper, you're right. I mean, to get the propaganda train out, key cog on a championship team not that long ago. Like, no question. But I just picture him on the bench, and he always is doing so much. And so much of the fun of last year was the bench celebrations, and I just don't want that to be taken away from me. But yeah, on paper,
all those guys are now no longer on the roster.
I know. Yeah.
So it's
you're right. That's
it's
actually
changing no matter what. Yeah,
that's true. That's probably actually I recant A- just purely for the bench mob vibes. But my guy is, obviously Australian bias here a little bit, but Aaron Baines, I know he worked out for a bunch of teams and it was reported that they did well. I know Himmelsbach kind of reported that the Celtics weren't really looking at him as a serious option, but it does feel like they're taking the approach of like wait and see, right? So all those guys that you've listed are still available. Baines, I mean, obviously it was a 3-minute clip that I saw.
He was making all of his threes. I saw it.
Making threes, right?
I'm on that train, but I just figured, once Himmelsbach killed my dreams, I had to move on.
Yeah. Well, I just wonder, like, he's still available. Everybody that comes back to Boston finds themselves again. Horford, Tyus, Baines. Yeah. No reason why he can't replicate that.
What about you? How do you see them filling that third spot?
Yeah, I honestly, this is a deep Reddit dive here.
Yes.
Apparently, someone on Reddit was on a plane with this young guy who played for Oklahoma City named Oliver Sarr, who I have never fucking heard of, but apparently dropped 24 points in a game last year and is like 22 years old. And he's going to a concert, but they also think he's working out for the Celtics. So that's some deep cut shit from Reddit where they maybe that's the guy, but ultimately I hate to say it, I'm on board with Dwight Greenie. I am. Like, I think the biggest thing is that despite how big of a dumbass he was for 90% of his career, these last couple of years, he and Melo have both accepted, like, I'm just a bench guy now. I'm just going to do my job. I'm going to play my 15, 12 minutes a game, and I'm going to rebound and play some defense. And at the minimum, that will end up costing us like $8 million because of the tax. I think that's probably as best we're going to do. Like Aldridge scares me. He's unplayable on defense too at this point. So I don't know. I'm not buying the Baines hype.
And you have to remember, Brad just showed us that if he brings in a minimum guy, so I'm going to consider Schroeder, like, the MLE minimum, whatever. Right. If it's not working or if there's not the right mix, he'll right that wrong and he'll get rid of you at the deadline. So if you bring in someone like Dwight and we get to February and it's not working, or if he's bringing more negative than positive, whereas I feel like Ainge would have been stubborn enough, would have seen it through because like he wouldn't want to admit his mistake. Brad is like, listen, if you're not on this page of playing how we want to play and doing what we want to do, we're too close to be like fucking around with that. Yeah. And he would make an adjustment at the deadline.
Yeah. Right. I was joking, but that's my hesitancy. And I'm scarred from the 18-19 season where we were like, we're coming in, we're loaded. And I didn't really take into consideration all of the chemistry potential issues. And so when I think about this year, like there's going to be a lot of guys on this team that are going to have to sacrifice minutes. And so I'm just bringing someone in.
Not only that,
yeah, go on.
Yeah, but not only that, but like, and this may be on your sheet to touch on later, but like, I think all of us need to understand that there's probably going to be some immediate regression, just because they were playing like 800 level basketball for the last they were like 27-5, right? Like as awesome as that is, like that will come back down to earth on some level. And I still have concerns over like, there's a difference between being the hunter and the hunted, right? Last year, there wasn't really that level of expectation. They were the hunter. They were just kicking ass and, having that mentality. But maybe I just have the PSD from their inability to build off wins in the postseason against good competition. Yeah. And maybe part of that is, like you said, that 2018-19 season where they were on every cover, they were picked as the favorite. Like, I do think there's a little bit of a sense of, hey, we were 2 fucking wins away. Like, we're golden. Yeah. We just need to get to the playoffs healthy, and it doesn't matter where we're seated. I'm a little, and listen, I'm going to see one preseason game and immediately go against everything I'm saying right now. But for right now, on July 20th, I do have that like slight concern of how much are they going to push for, regular season? Like, will they give a shit of, a 3 seed or a 4 seed to, jeopardize health? Or is it going to be like we just saw this past season where they really start to put an emphasis on seeding towards the end of the year to like ramp up for the playoffs? I think it's crazy. Like, I feel like there are some who think we're going to have like a 73-9 season. And it's like there will be regression just because like they finished the season like 27-5. That's just like, it's too crazy of a winning percentage to think that's just what life is going to be like all the time.
Yeah, I think Vegas has us at 55.5. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we land a little north of where we're at this year. I think we have 51 wins this year. I wouldn't be surprised if we're at like 52, 53, but it's just kind of more consistent throughout the season, and we don't
as
have,
opposed to right. Yeah.
Right, that crazy second half where we're an entirely different team. And I think the good thing about how this Celtics team is built is the defense gives you a really good floor. Like, you're just going to beat the shit out of these bad teams that cannot score,
Minus the Pistons.
Minus the fucking Pistons, yeah. Cade and the boys.
Could not beat the Pistons.
Thank God they didn't make the playoffs. That's all I'll say. But anyway, all right, let's move on here a little bit. Tatum and LeBron were in the news, and I cannot stress this enough. LeBron, bubble fraud. LeBron on the shop. LeBron on the shop, and I'm not going to talk about his comment about Boston fans. Don't worry, guys. LeBron compared Tatum's finals performance to him in 07 against the Spurs, and he played against the same team of my first finals, because he always makes it about himself. Oh, that was my ad lib. I played against the Spurs. It's the same shit, and they took advantage of me not knowing much. So LeBron, 55% from the floor, 6 turnovers a game, 6.75 assists. Tatum, 36.7 from the floor, 3.8 turnovers a game, even though it felt like 100 a game, and 7 assists. So he actually outplayed LeBron. And so LeBron's basically saying the Warriors were just the veteran team. They know how to take advantage of Tatum's lack of experience on that level. But we have a Reddit comment here from user Centaur Questions that says, I think fatigue was a much bigger factor in Tatum's finals performance than inexperience was. So, Greenie, do you agree with LeBron? I mean, do you think it was a mix of the two? And
I think it was definitely sort of along. It was in the same book, but a different chapter. You know what I mean? So it was like, it was reminiscent of that 2007 series where, you read the numbers. They were in the ballpark of each other. Yeah. Where I think it differs is, and again, I mean, we say this having not played in the finals and LeBron having been in the finals. So like, what the hell do we know? But I would think it was more partly fatigue, but partly they just as a collective unit couldn't figure out how to counter what the Warriors were doing. And I don't think had they played in a finals against a different team, like that would have mattered, so to speak, right? Like when I think of where the experience came into play, it was how the fact that like the Warriors never panicked at any part of that finals, right? Because they knew that they've proven to themselves that they can get it done. Whereas the Celtics, you could tell their inexperience just in terms of being on that stage and have everything be magnified. Like when things started to snowball, they couldn't stop the bleeding. But I think when it comes to Tatum's struggles, it was, like, is it inexperience that he couldn't beat Andrew Wiggins off the dribble? Like, not to me, it isn't. But I think now that he's gone through it, like he now has the burden that LeBron had to deal with of he's going to have to deal with this choking in the finals like moniker until he doesn't. And that's just when you're a franchise guy and you're on that level, like that's just the price of doing business. Like the same way if he had an unbelievable finals and won finals MVP, he would get all the praise and the benefit that goes along with that. But it's like, until Giannis got over the hump, the knock on him was he couldn't get over the hump. So when you want to be that, like, I just don't think you can have it both ways. I don't think you can talk about Tatum being this top 10, top 5 player, which he's ascending into. And then when you're on that stage, if you don't execute, you don't get to like avoid, even if some of the things you're now hearing about him online are complete garbage and make no freaking sense. It's like people forget what he did to get to the finals, right? But that just comes along with, hey, if you don't want that, don't lose 3 straight to lose the finals. It's just the price of doing business.
Yeah, man. I mean, I go and your mentions all over Twitter. Anytime Tatum is brought up, it's roasting underneath, and I feel like that meme from The Godfather. Look what they're doing to my boy, because we know what he did to get there. Like, man, you can go through the moments of the playoffs from round 1 all the way through, and this dude was just on an absolutely ridiculous level. Like the signature moments he had through that playoff run relative to someone like Embiid, who doesn't have any through his whole career still, like it's absolutely insane. I think that it's not one or the other. I think it's a little bit of both. Like, Patriots fan, people when they would go against the Patriots in the playoffs and they had maybe had a slightly less talented team, it's like, but some people believed that the experience and being there made a difference, and some people didn't. I'm someone that just believed having that dude, that coach, that infrastructure makes a massive, massive difference. Steph Curry's 10 years older than Tatum. He's been doing this for a decade longer in high leverage situations. Of course, he's going to have an ability to stay more calm. They've been down 3-1 against the Thunder. They've been down 2-1 against the Cavs. Like, the Celtics are still getting there. And it wasn't necessarily just Tatum. It was all of them. But then on the fatigue side of things, like, there's no question. Everybody's seen the stats that this dude Tatum played more minutes than anyone in the past decade. The last one between the regular season and the playoffs to play this many minutes was LeBron in 2011. And LeBron's like at the top of that list across the board. And that's personally just incredible that Tatum's able to continue to do this year in, year out. But like going up, besides his rookie year, this guy has not had a break. Like between 1920, he came to Australia for the World Cup, where I got to meet Deuce and Brandy, like the shortened COVID seasons both. And like this dude has not had a break in like 4 years. The only time he did have a break was when the season actually shut down for 6 months. And then he came back and had one of the best playoff runs a 21-year-old has ever had. And he dropped 29, 12, and 7 in a game 7 against the Raptors, one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. Like, once this dude takes a little break, and he's going to hear it. Like, we know that these guys hear it. We know Tatum definitely hears this stuff. Like, he's going to come back ready to go. And this depth that we've added is going to make a massive difference with how he's able to. Yeah, massive difference. Like, the load that this guy's carrying is so insane. Like, the usage isn't as crazy as the Luka numbers, but what he's putting in on the other end, like watching him chase around Durant, Drew, Jimmy, and then chasing around those dudes. When you play against the Warriors, man, the level of energy it takes, they didn't score more than 107 points. Like, it felt like they were kind of ripping us apart, but it was literally just Steph being a top 10 all-time great player, and that was it. Yeah. Other than that, these guys were shutting them down, and Tatum was a massive, massive part of that.
Here's the only thing I'd say, and Spoonie, you may weigh in on this as well, but like, I just feel like you can't have it both ways, where it's like nobody was talking about fatigue when this team was up 2-1 with a 4-point lead with 4 minutes left in game 4. When Tatum looked good in game 3, nobody was really talking about fatigue. At the same time, like you said, his minutes played, like, it's understandable to think that, like, hey, he's probably, you know, with his burden and all that, it could be a factor. But when you look at where he struggled, he shot better from 3 than from 2. He couldn't make a layup. So it's like, right. Are you not making a layup because you're fatigued, but then you're shooting 40% from 3, you know, on good volume? So it's like, I just think he had a bad finals. Like, it's okay to say sometimes guys just don't play well. And I think collectively as a team, where I just don't really love the fatigue angle is, like, again, they were winning with 4 minutes left, up 2-1 in game 4. So it's like they got off to a 14-2 or whatever start in game 6. So, like, were they not fatigued at that moment? But then when just because the Warriors made a run, like, now all of a sudden the fatigue is a thing. I can understand why they would be tired, but, like, they didn't get swept. They didn't, like, it's not like they weren't at all competitive. It's not like, you know, the Warriors are obviously older, and, like, why wouldn't they be as fatigued? So I don't know. It's just unfortunate. And I think that's what makes the finals loss so painful for me, is because, like, they were just so dominant. Like, Tatum and Brown were so, like, I think we always, in all of their previous runs, were like, if we could just get peak Tatum and Brown, no one is going to beat this team. And coming off that Milwaukee series and getting through Miami when both of them were just playing at such a high level, it was like, holy shit, it's actually friggin' happening. And then you get 2 wins away and you're like, holy shit, this team hasn't lost 2 games in a row all fucking year. They're going to do it. And they just, you know, they lost 3 in a row. I just can't believe it.
Yeah, I do think there's definitely a fatigue factor. But the thing about the finals is, if you make it there, you are always going to be fatigued. Like, those games were sloppier than, like, if you go back and watch the Celtics play the Nets, like, they are flying the fuck around on defense. But the Warriors were tired too. I mean, it's really a war of attrition. We talk about it every year. It's all about injuries in the playoffs, right? Ask Bucks fans. And I mean, I do think they were tired, but I'm not sure you can use it as an excuse, because every finals loser ever could say they were tired, because the winners are too. I do think Tatum didn't play that well.
Not only that, right? But, like, if you're worried about fatigue, don't play with your food in earlier rounds and lose games at home to extend series. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you were fatigued, like, good, that's on you for fucking around and blowing game 6 at home or blowing game 5 against Milwaukee.
Let Milwaukee hang around.
Yeah. So it's like, like, it was self-inflicted.
I think that's all connected. It's like the inexperience plus the inexperience led to some of the fatigue. They should have ended that series in 6 against Milwaukee. They should have ended it in 6 against Miami at least. And the Warriors ended their series against the Grizzlies in 6. The series against the Mavs ended in 5. And so, like, I'm not someone who thinks that was the only reason they lost. I think they just took that punch in game 4, and that was, like, at the end, and the mental. I
think it was mental fatigue.
I'm not saying it necessarily was physical, because you're right. Because Tatum was knocking down the threes. It was just like, I'm just gonna keep going for it, and I can't solve this one. I don't have the mental kind of the reserves to figure this last puzzle out.
It was more, it was more like that game 4. The final 4 minutes of game 4 was the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I just think it was like the psychological punch. I just don't think they ever really recovered from. And I think, if they win that game, even if they lose, I mean, granted, they lost 3 straight, so who the hell knows? But I just think even if you then lose game 5, I just think the vibe and the psychological advantage you have of being up 3-1 is different from 2-2. And it doesn't seem like it because it's only one game. But the way, like, Steph coming in, and Grant, I don't know if you heard it, like, he talked about it today. It's like they heard how they were celebrating in the locker room. Like, they knew we just won the finals because this is the one we had to have.
Yeah, that was next up on the run sheet as I was going to bring up that Grant Williams comment. He said that the Warriors were screaming after Game 4. They knew they shouldn't have won that game. I went on the pod after Game 5 and said, I don't give a shit that we lost this game because Game 4 was the game we had to win. I was really concerned after that Game 4 loss. And, like, you're going back to the Bay for Game 5. You expect to lose that game when you're kind of starting at the series, like, okay, if we could take one in the Bay and then 2 at home, and then we'll lose Game 5. You always expect to lose that Game 5. So it's interesting that Grant kind of felt the same way as all the fans. And I think it goes back to show, like, he's a player. He probably felt that in the moment too, right? Like, he's not just saying that after the fact. He was probably like, fuck, we just let that slip, and maybe the final slip. So he also said that he was confident we were the more talented team, and it was their championship pedigree that got them through. I don't know about Greenie. Do you agree with Grant's assessment?
I hate whenever I hated it, and I wrote about this today. Like, I hate when Ainge said that shit in the bubble.
Yeah.
If you lose, you do not get to say you were the better team. Period. Full stop. End of discussion. As far as I'm concerned. If you like, and what made it so funny is he's like, all the things that he listed that the Warriors did prove, like, those are things that show they were the best. And, like, you may say, we had more talent, but if your talent doesn't show up, then what good is it? You know what I mean? Like, like, oh, you wanted to, like, dog Andrew Wiggins. Well, guess what? Andrew Wiggins outplayed both of your freaking number 1 and 2 options. So, like, maybe the talent disparity wasn't as different as you thought. You had nobody in your bench that was able to match Jordan Poole and Otto Porter. So, like, I think we just had this, like, it was this weird narrative that, like, the Warriors weren't this talented team when it's like, before Draymond Green got hurt in January, they were they had the best record in the NBA. And that's in January. Yes. So it's like, it just really just gets under my skin when you say, oh, we were the better team. Like, no. If you were the better team, you would have won. And the reasons you're talking about, discipline, mental toughness, all that stuff, those are things that a better team shows. So I want Brad to institute, like, a $500,000 fine if you if you say the words, we were the better, like, you will never hear Brad Stevens say that the Celtics were the better team.
Hell no.
In that
Hell
finals.
no.
I just, like, it really bothered me when Ainge said it. When I saw, and, like, because it's Grant and all that jazz, I knew it was gonna, I just, like, just shut up and don't, like, you can think that and fans can say that, radio people can say that, whatever. But, like, you lost. So you don't get to say you're the better team because now I have to deal with, like, Warriors fans dragging him all over again. And, like, you see Steph is already putting out petty Instagram stories about it. And it's like, God damn it. Now, God forbid, if we ever meet in the finals again, like, I'm going to have to deal with this shit. And it's just like, I just hate it. I just wish they would never talk like that.
Yeah, man, it reminds me so much of the Miami stuff in the bubble. Like, and in the moment, I felt like that we were the better team, but then you reflect and it's like, well, if you're going to turn the ball over and someone like Bam's going to, like, just put Daniel Tice in the basket for 3 straight games, then you're not the better team, even though it kind of felt like you let one slip. Like, yeah, exactly. He literally, in the same moment of saying that we were the more talented team and then listing the things that he said they weren't good enough at, I was like, dude, the lack of self-awareness right in this 8-second clip is embarrassing. Like, I hate it, and I don't, like, you said it all, Greenie. Like, just think it and use it as fuel. But, like, you lost in 6, you didn't lose in 7, like.
And you lost 3 straight, 2 of them coming at home. So, like, I'm sorry. You don't get to say you were the better team. Sorry.
And you know who has a lot of talent? The Nets. You know what happened to the Nets? That shit doesn't matter if you can't actualize it on the court. So, all right, fellas, before we wrap up, I just got one more thing, very important item we need to discuss here. Kyrie Irving was supposed to show up and play at the Drew League, and he no-showed. What a douche. I mean, am I right, guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to the Drew League is on my bucket list. It has been for a long time. It's just it looks like so much fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think anyone is surprised. I think it's who knows, but at the same time, like, we don't know how concrete it was that he was really going to be there. I just think, it plays into the story, into the drama, and I mean, listen, it's not the first time I imagine we'll have something like that come up, or it's not the last time. So I don't know. I'm burnt out on Kyrie Irving drama. Like, I'm good. Like, I can't. I've had my fair share.
Yes. See, I've been copping shit on in the comments about how last pod I was like, look, I think it might be time to forgive, not like forgive, but don't forget. That's what my mom always told me. It's like I'm kind of over it. And like, look, we did it to ourselves. We traded for Kyrie. We heard the weird stories about, he didn't go to the team. We still traded for him. We copped the IT curse for 4 years between Hayward's ankle, Kyrie getting injured, the COVID-riddled season. We lost to the Nets. We got blitzed by them without Jalen, but it came full circle. We kicked the shit out of them. Kyrie had his one moment in the Garden. I might feel different if they would have won that series, almost certainly, but came full circle. I'm not burning it. I'm keeping it.
Disgusting.
I'm keeping it.
Disgusting.
I'm keeping it. Like, forgive but don't forget. I'm gonna look. When I went to the Garden for game 2, in round 1, I wasn't one of the booers. I was enjoying the atmosphere, but I'm just like, yeah, I'm cool on the Kyrie stuff now.
Yeah, I would say, like, anytime we play the Nets or we're in a series with the Nets, game on, right?
Yeah,
like, I'm in. I'm down to slander the hell out of that man for, being a big baby and disappearing in playoff series. But, like, if they're not playing each other, I just, like, yeah, he's a weird dude. He does, like, this is just par for the course of what he does. And he's a polarizing figure and he brings it on himself and then, famously sort of absolves himself of any responsibility. But, like, and I'm going to sit back. I have my popcorn. I'm going to enjoy the dumpster fire. But, like, it's just so exhausting. Like, I'm happy I don't have to deal with it and spin zone it for my own mental health. And I can just, like, sit back and enjoy it. But listen, we have much better things to put energy towards. But it is. I did laugh when, like, he no-showed. It's like, you can see that.
It's
coming.
classic. It's funny at this point. You're both bigger men than me, but that is going to do it for this one. Greenie, tell the people where they can find you.
Barstool Sports, @StoolGreenie on Twitter. We're trying to get through the dog days together. We'll just, appreciate everybody who clicks and reads and shares and all that jazz. And hopefully we'll, get through this dark time and recovery period together. I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but, like, every day, so, like, in my office, I have that banner, and it's like, now,
That's
like,
sweet.
every time I come in here, I just, like, I trigger myself. I might have to take it down because I'm like, 2 fucking wins
Can't
away.
keep looking at it.
I'm just like, I don't know. It took me 12 years to get over 2010. I don't know. I don't know how long this one will take me, but, I certainly appreciate everyone who comes along the ride with me.
Well, look, as far as breaking curses goes, once the Red Sox broke the curse of the Bambino, I mean, we've won that many titles. So maybe that's what's next for the Celtics. I hope for your mental health.
I hope it's not 86
so.
years.
I know. I mean, listen, I've had 1 in 35 years on this planet, so it's like to finally get over the hump and get that close just to collapse how they did is like, it's going to take me a while, but I know the first preseason possession, I'm like, I'm ready. I'm all in. So that's just how it goes. And we didn't really touch on it, but I had some thoughts watching everybody in Vegas. Like that might be a whole separate podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, we could absolutely have you back on anytime, Greenie, if you want to get those thoughts out. But all right, Jake. Love your work, mate, as Ben would say. So that's gonna do it for this one. We're out.